everybody, welcome back to my channel. Tonight I have been sewing like crazy. I have a ton of orders this week to sew and get out, and so that's what I've been doing this evening, but I wanted to take a little break and come on and talk about the things that I've been reading lately because it's occurred to me my basket is full. So it's time to talk about these things. It is February 16th, so a little more than halfway through the month, and I really feel like it has been a good reading month for me. I haven't completely finished a whole lot of books, but I have dipped into a lot of things. I have learned a ton of stuff, and I feel like my reading direction is sort of changing a little bit. Not necessarily from what I thought it might be this year. Maybe it's just kind of moving into that. So get to all that in this video. Now, after having kind of a bummer January, I was really looking forward to reading one of my favorite series right now, and that is the Emma M. Lyon series, and this is book 8. So as far as I know, this is the most recent book that she has published. And so I started off the month by reading this, and while I really do not like the direction that this story is going right now, I did enjoy the book for the most part. Like, I'm okay with it as long as it doesn't stay where it's at. Apparently, the woman is going to write like over 20 of these, so we probably are just getting started with the life of Emma here, and so I'm willing to wait it out, I think. I gave this one 3 stars, and I did so begrudgingly. I did it because it's Emma, and for the most part as a whole, I love this series. I love her. I am like rooting for her. I love her, whole little world that she has. But this particular one, I did not like for a few reasons. One, like I said, I just don't like where the story is going, but also I did not like how this one was written. So every other book is written in journal entry style, but the pages are just a few pages. So sometimes she will go a little, deep into a story, but it's just a few pages. It's realistic that she went home that night and wrote this out. This one is written much more like a novel, where Emma would have needed a couple of hours probably to write each of these journal entries, and she's on vacation. And with all of the other things that she has in her day, I'm just having a hard time believing that she really sat down and wrote this entire book, in the way that it's written over the course of the month with all the other things that she was doing. So that kind of was not super believable. And just the fact that it did go on, 20, 25 pages or more as one journal entry. It was more like a novel and less like dipping in and out of her life. And then because I did not like where that story was going, it just felt like, I don't know, I was ready to be done with it. Like, I was counting pages, and I don't normally do that. And then another element was just that this one was just pretty dark and depressing. I get it that her whole life can't be one big, slapstick humor joke. But there just wasn't a whole lot in this one that was funny or endearing. A lot of it was really serious. We start dealing with some of the other characters' serious issues, and I just don't think Emma is being super wise right now. I don't know. The last thing I think that bothered me was the characters of this particular volume were really talking up Emma like she was some wonderful person on a pedestal. She was unlike any other person. She, one of a kind, sort of she's so special and she's so wonderful and all these things. And I'm not saying she's not special and wonderful, but what I'm saying is we've all figured that out just by reading about Emma. Like, we've been reading her story, following her character, and the way that she, her interactions and all the things that endear her to us. We know that Emma is special and one of a kind, but to have some of these other characters kind of go on and on about it, I felt like it sort of cheapened it. Like, you don't have to tell me. I already know. But you defining it for me is making it less what it is. Does that make sense? I just wasn't pleased with this at all. And I'm really hoping that these books aren't taking a different direction in this serious novel sort of form. I don't know. You guys let me know. I know a lot of you guys have read it. Let me know what you think and how you felt about all of that. All right, that was a lot to spend on one book. Next up, I attempted really hard to read Wormwood Abbey. A few weeks ago, I made a video talking about the books I was reading, and I didn't want to talk about the one that I was on because I was like reserving judgment for the end, right? Well, I did not make it. I did DNF. I DNF'd at page 70. I just wasn't into it. Now, granted, I'm not really a reader of fantasy, and I've never read anything with dragons in it if it wasn't like King Arthur, or that might be it. So there were just elements that I wasn't already into. But I loved the cover of this. I just was so pretty. I love all the covers of these books. And so I really wanted to give it a try. Some of my other booktube friends have talked about how much they love this series. And I think that I'm battling with being pretentious, which will also be honest, or not. But I think I'm just going to go with honest and possibly pretentious, and hopefully you guys will forgive me, but this is just not a well-written book. And I really struggled because on the very first page there are so many grammatical errors, and then as I'm going through, like, the editor in me is just screaming, and I hate when that happens because I feel like I already passed judgment on this story before I could even get into it. Which is why I did read to page 70, because I didn't want my DNFing to be just about the fact that it needs a good editor, right? And so I did give it a good try, guys, but the errors in this book are so distracting and frustrating to me. And I feel like when this kind of stuff happens in a book, I don't get irritated at the author. I do usually think, wow, you really should have splurged on a good editor. Like, you spent all your time writing the story, why didn't you hire a good editor? So I guess I do kind of put a little bit of blame on the writer, but I really put the majority of the blame on the editor. Like, you were hired to do this job. You put yourself out there as a professional, and you don't know how to edit. It makes me sound like such a snob, I know. But I also know I'm not the only one who thinks this way and sees these things, so I'm okay. I'm trying to be kind and gentle and not pick people apart, right? But if you are one who can overlook that, great, awesome. I'm just usually not someone who can overlook that. And maybe that's really immature of me. I'm willing to admit that. But this one just had a lot. And it's marketed as written for adults, I think. I didn't see that it was marketed for children or, middle grade or whatever, but I really think that's where it belongs. And I also feel like if this woman took the time to write these stories, like, hire a good editor, pay the money, splurge, because it is so worth it. And I don't know, I guess they're popular books, but I feel like that makes or breaks it to a large part of your potential audience, and it definitely broke it for me. So anyway, I won't be continuing with the Secrets of Ormdale series, although maybe I'll just buy them so I can rip the covers off and hang them on my wall because they are really cute. Okay, and then the next thing that I read was the story out of the complete classic illustrated Sherlock Holmes. This is like a 3 or 4 book series that my daughter owns, and she let me borrow this one because I wanted to read the story that's called The Adventure of the Copper Beeches. And February is Holmes is Where the Heart Is, where we read things by, about Sherlock Holmes, and by extension, things about Arthur Conan Doyle as well. So I picked the short story The Copper Beeches because that one is set in Winchester in the UK, which is one of my favorite places in the whole world. And in June, I actually made a little video where I read from this story. at the place that is mentioned in the story. So in front of the Black Swan Hotel, there's a big black swan way up on the top. If you watch that video, you'll see what I'm talking about. So I sat near there and read from this story. So I wanted to read the whole thing. I did. It was okay. It was on my 50 by 50 list. So I did journal into this book. I didn't write a whole lot about it. This was my journal page. So it featured a woman, it featured a black swan, it featured a key, and so I put all that in there. But basically, the story was really easily solved. I was kind of solving it as it went along. So when it was done, I was just like, yep. So that made it not quite as awesome, but still fun to read about Winchester, fun to imagine it in my head. I kind of like silently made fun of Doyle a little bit because he talks about the characters on the train and how they see the tower of the cathedral, and the tower of Winchester Cathedral is not a whole lot to like get excited about, but even so, it's not visible from the train line at all. So I was just kind of like, have you ever even been there? But he probably has, and he's just, you know, it's a story. I don't have to take it personally. Anyway, so I read that. It was pretty good. I probably won't do anything else for the Holmes is Where the Heart Is this month. Just kind of feeling like I want to go a different direction with my reading this month. So, oh, and I'm still reading this, but I have read quite a bit of Evelina by Fanny Burney. I picked this as my Febregency pick. I am like 2/3 of the way through it. And I will talk more about it, obviously, when I get all done with it. Which will hopefully be in the next day or two. I'm really done. But I was really done a long time ago. As much as I love the Regency era, this particular book is just, I don't know. Fanny Burney was one of Jane Austen's sort of like, you know, people that she looked up to and, you know, influenced by her writing or whatever. But what Fanny Burney sort of kind of threw out there, Jane Austen perfected, and the difference is just very clear. And here I'm going to step on toes again, but last summer I read Arabella by Georgette Hare. Everybody's talking up Georgette Hare. All the Jane Austen lovers were talking her up, and I was like, I'm going to read at least one. So I read Arabella when I was in England, and I was not a fan. I mean, it was okay. It was a cute story, but it was just so like farcical. It was so not believable. And it was like the humor that was just over the top for me, but I kind of have like a dry, weird, morbid sense of humor also. So maybe I just wasn't a gentle enough person to like the story all that much. I don't know. But I didn't really super love it. And this is how Evelina feels. It feels like Georgette Hare did not take inspiration from Jane Austen. She took it from Fanny Burney. So I would be interested actually to find out who some of Georgette Hare's inspirations really were from the Regency era. But it is that same farcical, like unbelievable stuff, like really over the top characters, and over the top behavior that I'm just, I don't know. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just saying like, it's not Mrs. Bennet level. It's like really, it's like drunken Mrs. Bennet level. Anyway, not loving it. And there's just not a whole lot going on. But I have a theory. And if Fanny Burney finishes this story off in the way that my theory goes, like what I'm thinking could happen, I will think she's a total genius. I'll be like, yes, that was perfect. If she doesn't, I'm rewriting the story myself when I'm retired because I have a great ending for this story. And I'm just really hoping, like I could see how it could be setting up. So when I get done with this book, I will tell you if it ended the way that I want it to. And I will tell you with a warning, what my ending was, if I remember. If I remember to tell you that, I will tell you what my ending was, but I will warn against the spoilers beforehand. That's a lot of promises. I hope I actually keep them. If I remember, I will keep them. Anyway, Evelina, working on that. So I wanted to kind of pop that in. I'm kind of going in order, but I wanted to pop that in because I'm now changing the subject. So I want to get through Evelina because I am really feeling a strong desire to read nonfiction, and it has been so long. So I used to read pretty much everything I read was nonfiction. I very rarely read a fiction, and if it was a classic. That's still kind of the case, but I'm finding myself reading a whole lot more fiction, whether it be classics or the every now and then, like more modern fiction or middle grade, that kind of stuff. I did read quite a bit more of that last year than I normally do. And for the last few years, I've just had a hard time getting into nonfiction. I think it's just been distracted in my mind with different things that have gone on in life. And some of the stuff I like to read, you really got to focus. And it takes a lot of I always stop for research tangents and rabbit trails and that sort of thing. Well, my plan this year was to dive into learning about the Middle Ages. And I said that back in December in my planning video for this year. And so I picked out 10, I think, books that were all nonfictions about the Middle Ages. And then some of my fiction reading, even so far, has been kind of side quests to go along with those medieval nonfictions. I read about King Arthur. I've got a couple other fiction books that I'll talk about in a different video that I'm looking at reading. And so anyway, I'm just on that kick. So I'm really kind of wanting to put away all of my plans and just focus on this right now because I don't know how long I'll feel like doing it. But anyway, I have a lot more to say about the medieval, studies that I'm doing in particular, and I'll make another video for that. But one thing that I have been reading is this book called Meetings with Remarkable Manuscripts. I've showed this to you guys before. And this past weekend, I read the second portion. I'm trying to read one chapter each month because there are 12 chapters. However, I'm really probably going to keep reading. The next chapter is on the Book of Kells, and I really, really want to read that. So I'll probably read that in the next week or two. But this chapter was on the Codex Amiatinus, which is in a library in Florence. From the 700s, around the 700s is when they think that this one was written. And it is currently, from what I understand, up in a abbey, the Abbey of something and Jarrow Abbey in Northumbria. If you know a whole lot more about this than I do, just be gracious. But anyway, I love this book because it talks in all kinds of different subjects regarding the manuscript, right? So we'll talk about how it was made, the actual construction of it, what it's made of, the size of it, how it is stored and how it is moved, how it, the boxes that they make to put them in, that kind of thing. And then it will, of course, talk about the contents and the illustrations, the decorated writing or the illuminated writing. And then it will talk about the history of it. What do we know about it? Who has had it in the past? Has it been, has it gone between different churches or different countries even? And all the way back to when it was first put together and maybe why it was put together, and just it really digs deep. But the voice, Christopher de Hamel, the writer of it, he is just such an interesting person, an interesting writer. So he just makes you you just fly through the readings because it's so interesting. This is a picture of the Codex Amiatinus. This width part of it here is 11 inches, no joke. This part of it is 21 or 22 inches. That's a huge book. The pages alone are 75 pounds. But then with this wooden binding and the buckles on it, and then I think they said the box that they made to transport it in, it's over 90 pounds. It's a stinking heavy, huge book. And then here are a couple of the pages. One of the things I thought was really interesting, this is supposed to be Ezra as a scribe, right? So they've mixed their time periods here. mostly medieval. But one of the things that I found to be so interesting about these is that this particular book, he said that like the inside pages are almost pristine. Like there are not the usual markings like someone came in and wrote a bunch of stuff here and there, or, you know, dirty hands, someone spilled something on, you know, chocolate on your fingers or whatever. Like there's not marks of it being used and read over the years like so many other manuscripts that he studies. And so he was saying like they either took really good care of it or they just never opened it. And so that's just so crazy to think, right? Something that has been around for over 1,300 years and it's still inside, like in such beautiful condition. Like that's so neat. But stuff like this just fascinates me. I really love this book, and he has a whole ton more. So I'm just going to be devouring his books probably for a really long time. So that's that one. And then the other medieval book that I have been reading is this one, In Search of the Dark Ages by Michael Wood. And apparently he's a famous guy over in the UK. So did not know that until one of you lovely people told me so. But I read 2 chapters from this one. The first one is on kind of like the early ages leading into the Middle Ages in England. It was basically talking about Caesar coming, and then Claudius coming, and then the Iceni tribe, which is the tribe that Boudica and her husband were ruling over. And when Boudica's husband died, she, you know, took over leading it, and they eventually had an uprising against the Romans and fought really hard and wrecked a bunch of stuff, but ultimately Boudica and the Iceni did not prevail. And so just kind of talked about that, you know, the life of that real, you know, uprising there, and the famous character of Boudica. And so what I'm doing with this book is I am writing essays or narrations. If you're familiar with the Charlotte Mason or classical education, I'm writing narrations for each of the chapters. So I wrote up my narration and then I read the second chapter, which was about King Arthur, but also just kind of like things around that story and time, who it could have been, you know, because most people think that, you know, King Arthur is not real, it's just a legend, but, you know, where did the idea come from, and what other figures in history could it have been referring to, that kind of thing. And so that one, I feel like I didn't get quite as much out of as I did the first chapter on Boudica, but partly just because King Arthur is something you can't just condense to one chapter. And so he was just very much glossing over a lot of things. And I was reading it really late at night and I kept falling asleep. So the next chapter is on the King of Sutton Hoo, and that's a whole thing I won't go into right now, but looking forward to reading that. All right, and then I've been reading from my book, Notes from Walnut Tree Farm by Roger Deacon. This is just a collection of diary entries from, again, a famous guy from the UK called Roger Deacon, who I don't know anything about, but these are just little excerpts from his journals over the years, and it's set up seasonally, so month by month. And they're interesting because it's all about his farm and nature and that sort of thing. And I started in October, so I've been trying to read each section for the corresponding month, but I got a little behind, and so I am currently in January, somewhere in the second week of January. So I've got, some pages here to make up for. So I'm just kind of taking this whenever I go, I go to the store and I'm waiting for my kids to go inside or something like that. And then I'll read a little bit of this. And then finally, my DNF. And my DNF is basically the Pickwick Papers. It's a soft DNF. I will come back to these. I will. But I don't know when, and I'm not going to stress out about it because I started reading this in December, and I was enjoying it for the most part. But I think I was in the mood for it. And then I just kind of, little by little, dwindled off in reading them, and then now I feel like I've forgotten characters and what's going on and whatever, and I'm just not interested in reading them right now. So I'm gonna put these books away, up with my Dickens stuff, and move it to a later portion of my life. I've got it on my 50 by 50 list, so maybe by the time I turn 50 I will have read them, but I'm not going to stress out about it if I don't, because my 50 by 50 list really is just a try list. It's not necessarily a finish list. So, but that's it. That's what I have been reading in the last week or so. I'm gonna try to finish Evelina. I won't finish it tonight, but hopefully in the next couple days I'll get Evelina finished. And then I don't know if I will pick up another fiction or if I will just continue in these two medieval books that I'm really into. I wanted to pick up, it's the collection of letters I told you guys about a couple of weeks ago between Jane Austen and her friend Anne Lefroy. And so I really wanted to pick up and read at least a little bit of that. So I probably will at least read some, so I can say that I did for this month. But yeah, I'm just really getting into the Middle Ages stuff. And so I kind of just want to focus on, what's appealing to me right now. So hope everybody is doing good. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching this far. Let me know what you are reading and what you're interested in right now. And I will see you soon, guys. Have a great day. Bye-bye.